Hi, I'm Matt Downer. I'm in my wood shop in Rico, Colorado, and I'm going to show you around, show you my shop and a couple of the projects I've been working on lately. So one of the most common questions I get is where do I source my wood? Here in Southern Colorado, the woods, the trees that grow naturally around here are not hard enough to stand the test of time as heirloom furniture. So the species that I usually work with, walnut, cherry, maple, a handful of others, I have to purchase from out of state. So here's an example of this walnut came from California. These other longer boards came from Pennsylvania. This is some mahogany from elsewhere in the world. I've got some beautiful curly maple from Vermont or Pennsylvania. California is a large source for me. I'll turn the camera around. You'll see that monster slab. These two pieces are Central California Claro walnut that was salvaged. They're a book match pair, meaning take a giant chunk of wood, slice it down the middle, open it up, and glue them together. So this face and this face will glue together, and the grain will be symmetrical from left to right down the median of that slab. They're going to make a beautiful dining table. So one thing about making furniture is that most of the tools tend to require these crazy raw materials to be straight and have 90 degrees and so on, so that you can machine them safely. So the first step when you have a chunk of wood, like say this one, let's see, it looks pretty flat, it's not flat at all, and this would be dangerous to take to, say, the table saw. So the first thing is to run it through this massive tool called a joiner. You can see these teeth here. You run this piece across here, creates a nice flat surface, then that flat surface can go onto the fence, is what this piece is called. You run it here, you get a nice straight edge along here that's 90 degrees to this one. Then you can safely take it to the next tool, which is the table saw. So this monster here is my table saw. Pieces run into the blade here, and this is actually a very accurate way of making all sorts of straight lines, cross cuts, all sorts of joinery happens here on the table saw. One interesting aspect of this guy is focus on this little green light. There is an electrical, very mild electrical current that runs through a circuit, through this blade, and detects if there is any skin or moisture content to the blade. So check that out. I tap it, it knows I've touched the blade. If I were to touch, if any part of my skin were to touch that blade while it's spinning, and this aluminum cartridge would dive into the table saw blade and stop it dead. Maybe 3 of these teeth would pass before the blade dove into this thing, stopped, the whole thing went below the surface of the bed, and instead of me running to the emergency room with an amputation, I get to put on a Band-Aid and get back to work. I've never done it yet, and I hope not to, but it's nice to know that it's there. So the joiner and the table saw that we've seen so far are great at creating flat surfaces and cutting very straight lines, but if I want to introduce any kind of curvature in the final form, they're terrible for that. But this guy is perfect for it. It's called Bandsaw. It's named after this flexible metal band of steel with the teeth on it. It's a rather dangerous tool, as you can imagine. This thing spinning around. Picture this thing running as fast as a car wheel at highway speeds, and how many teeth are passing through here. This is what butchers use to slice up meat, so you can imagine what it would do to your fingers. Obviously, like most of the tools around here, you have to be careful, but this does a great job of adding a lot of character to a final piece. A little bit of curvature goes a long way in a piece of furniture. As you may have noticed, all these tools are connected to these giant hoses. that are for dust collection. So what I can do is, by pressing this little remote control button, I can turn on the dust collector that is in that room there, and it will pull all the dust from each individual tool up and out and away and out of the shop so I can breathe easy. I can use these things called blast gates to isolate where the dust collection is focused and maximize their airflow. After the bandsaw, the various parts typically come to my workbench here, which is where all of the fine handwork happens. So something like cutting a light curve here, or fine-tuning the various parts of a dovetail piece like this guy. I don't know if you can see that. That all happens with these hand planes, chisels, various measuring devices like such. This, for example, is a bench chisel. This is probably my favorite tool in the whole shop. It's a chisel made in Japan by the descendants of samurai sword makers. Incredible. This thing is sharp enough to shave the skin, shave the hair off the skin of your arm. Hopefully not your skin, although it has been known to happen. I use this thing probably 6 or 7 days a week. I love this tool. So these three slabs of wood, these are much like that large book match pair, are urban salvaged walnut from Central California. They've all been sanded, and the gaps have been filled with epoxy that will blend in, and they are ready to receive their first coat of finish. And then we'll go on to the tops of these boxes, which are side tables that double as dog kennels. They're maybe the fanciest dog kennels in history. These, like I said again, are a book matched pair. So these two pieces were originally one large slab, sliced open, then these surfaces, the grain on this piece matches the grain on this one, and they're going to be on either side of a large stone fireplace, so it'll be a nice symmetrical pair. Geek side note on wood: this walnut from California, this portion is the root and the rest of the tree was up above. You can see this funky line through here. This is where another species of walnut was grafted onto the root. For various reasons, for productivity of the actual walnuts themselves, English walnut is grafted onto an American walnut rootstock that is resilient to the various pests in domestic soil. But the English walnut produces more abundant and sweeter nuts, which are the walnuts that we're familiar with. And that is why those graftings happened 100, 150 years ago. So as an example of a piece that's gone through all the various processes, the machining, the sanding, the joinery, and the finishing, and so on. These are parts to one of my more popular pieces. It's a page lamp, which is a floor lamp that I came up with the same summer that my daughter Paige was born. So as you can see, it's all sanded and oiled and the rest. Inside this little notch are the LEDs that are epoxied in place. Those little yellow squares are the actual illumination source. They glow incredibly brightly, use very little electricity, and last forever. And from a design perspective, the fact that they're only about yay thick allows me to inset them in all sorts of things and hide them away so you can't even see them until you turn them on. They're really, from a design perspective, they're just a real breakthrough. So this piece connects to this little pivot point here, corresponds to this part here, goes through yay, and there's a polished, either steel or polished stone counterweight that goes off the back here and allows this piece to pivot in an artistic way. That's the page layout. Project I'm in the midst of is a series of 4 mirror boxes, which is a popular design for me. They are a box inside of a box, and I call it the mirror box because there's a mirror and a box, which is extra clever. Feel free to suggest any other names if you can come up with them. This box with walnut, purple heart, and quilted maple. I'm not sure you can see the character of the wood there. When it's finished, it's going to be beautiful. This guy slides inside here for access to whatever. Yeah, in process. I'm just finishing up a series of 8 of these slider boxes, another very clever name, because they slide to reveal a bit of storage. Please, if you can rename this thing, I'd be appreciative. One interesting feature about these doors is the natural wood will expand and shrink based on the humidity of the season. And so in order for these things to stay flat and inside of their groove, they need to be held stably in place, but without attaching it permanently to whatever is stabilizing them. So you look on the edge, you'll see a little sliding dovetail, which allows this piece of wood to float within the channel of the sliding dovetail and keep it flat while still allowing it to expand and contract seasonally. It's kind of a high maintenance little detail, but it's very necessary for the longevity of the piece, and it adds a little nice hand-cut detail. If you look above me, you see an example of the adjustable canopy of one of the chandeliers that I make. Again, more of that walnut with embedded LED bulbs, and it is suspended from the ceiling by way of a ceiling mount plate, pulley wheels, and cords, as well as a polished stone or steel counterweight. So over the years, as my woodworking has evolved, I've had to become proficient not just with wood, but also with metalworking, stone sculpture, electrical wiring, photography, videography, and so on. They've all had their own learning curve, but each one is actually a new opportunity to be creative in a different medium, which is cool. So that's a little peek into how I do what I do and how these pieces get made. By all means, please leave a question if you have one in the comments, and I'll do everything I can to get to it and hopefully answer it sufficiently. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can do so through my website, which is mattdownerdesigns.com. And also definitely check out aha.org to check out other maker videos of what other people are up to in the area. It's a real pleasure to be a part of such a creative community of people, and AHA is an indispensable part of the arts in the Telluride area. So check it out, aha.org. Thanks, guys.